Hi everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Josh Delweiler. I'm Assistant Professor of Communication Design here at Texas State.
I'm Alexandria Pichola. I'm an Associate Professor of Graphic Design at Texas A&M University in Corpus Christi.
Yeah, so we're excited to bring Riso-Rama here at Texas State University for the first year. Although it is our third time around the runs. So we're very glad that you're here. We're sitting in the Flex Space Gallery, which is generously hosted the Riso-Rama exhibition here at Riso. I guess some numbers. So if you look around here, this is like 40% of the work that was submitted. We had over 300 submissions from over 100 artists from across the United States, and so this is the best of the best. I hope you get a chance to take a peek and look at the work, follow some of the people. Everyone's Instagram handle is on there. There's a bunch of really lovely books that we ask you to gently look through without pizza hands. What else? I'd like to thank the MFA program in Communication Design for sponsoring today's programming. Let's see. I think we'll just jump right into it. So it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speakers. RisoLana, coming here from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Co-founders Michael Lopez and Carl Orozco established RisoLana in 2021 to create a publicly accessible risograph studio that empowers the community through education and art making. Their mission is to cultivate an accessible creative space, build a network of socially engaged artists and designers, and organize a printed archive of Albuquerque's artistic and social movements. So please join me today for RisoLana, Michael Lopez, and Carlos Alaba.
Sweet. Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
it's really sweet. So I am Michael Lopez, Carlos Cabaldon, so we are kind of running RisoLana. I am the volunteer managing director, co-founder of RisoLana. It started around 4 years ago, just as a seedling of an idea. And that first seedling of an idea kind of came with this conversation about kind of what the space would be when myself and Carl Orozco, who's the founder who's not here, co-founder who's not here, we're kind of just talking about this idea of what we really wanted to see in a space if we had access to a risograph machine. So we did this partnering exercise where you talk about all the things that you're interested in and all the things that you're confused by and all the questions you have, and then you listen to each other, and you have a third person there listening, and then you kind of trade, and then you listen to the other person. And as we were talking, I was telling Carl, who's originally from New Jersey, we exist in the South Valley in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was telling Carl about this idea in New Mexico called Riso-Rama. So Riso-Rama is this idea kind of coined from academic and activist Tomas Atencio. And Riso-Rama is a gathering space for people to share the news, to gossip, to have conversations, to run into each other, and really just learn about each other through this kind of natural process of either running into each other or just spending time together. And Carl really liked the idea of Riso-Rama, and he was like, what if we called it Riso-Rana? And he's very punny, Carl's great, and I was like, this is incredible, let's do this. So it's kind of funny too, because when we first started this space, we didn't really know where we were going to exist. I just love this like Riso-Rana design, just like old school, it's just so beautiful. I have it tattooed on my chest, no I don't. We were both very adamant about it not being in our own homes. We wanted it to be somewhere in community. And having it in community also comes with some kind of, everything has its challenges in terms of accessibility, right? Unless it's like this thing that's free in this room you can open and then you're like, here, come use this. Who's going to maintain it? How's it going to be cared for? That kind of stuff comes up. So during that time, we knew some activists. Actually, real quick, I'm going to do this. I just won't be able to. I'm going to set a timer because we have like a half hour, right? Yeah. I can talk forever. If you run into me at the grocery store, I will talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So I'm going to set a timer so I don't talk too much. But so by trade, I'm a videographer. I make documentaries. That's really like my passion. I love storytelling. I also like experimental storytelling, collaborative storytelling, and I love the process. That's really what I enjoy. Carl Orozco, when we started, is also an educator and an artist. And so I think when we first came together, this idea of education being at the heart of what we do and learning being at the heart of what we do was really important, but also it being spaces that was accessible, that was outside of ourselves as individuals. So we had an opportunity to, I was documenting this building at the time, so this is the Social Enterprise Center at the South Valley Economic Development Center. And Partnership for Community Action is a grassroots community organizing space in Albuquerque. And so they were building this building, and it hadn't been finished yet, and we had this machine we were going to buy, but we didn't want to buy it until we had a space, and so I called up one of the kind of board members who I knew, and I was like, what do you think of a risograph print shop in this space? And he was like, yes, let's do it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So we are in the corner of this huge 17,000 square foot building, and we are in their boardroom. So this is where we live. I don't know, I'm sure you can experience this, maybe like being a student and having access to space that isn't your own space, or just making do with what you have. This is very like luxurious to me. It feels like a really luxurious studio. It's funny that it wasn't designed as a studio, it's a boardroom. But every time we do a project, we have to clean everything up. So this table is really, really clean at the end of the day, but that corner over there is a hot mess. It is just really like, you know, it just all gets crammed there. We like do a decent job of keeping it together. Yeah, but it's still like not like, we're in that corner. So we like move it all out, but we're sharing the space with them. And they've been really generous. So we're technically a project of Partnership for Community Action. They're a nonprofit organization. And I like to share this kind of stuff with people too, because if you're trying to start your own space, and if you're thinking about something like this, we are in this space for free. We don't pay any rent, and I think that's a huge in-kind gift. And that gift is based in a trust of us being stewards of the space, caring for that space, being really thoughtful about how we're bringing people into that space, and how we're really engaging with community. And so this is us with a group called Alma. They're a public art organization that works in Mosaic. So they came to do a group workshop with us and make some posters. This is Carl Orozco and Isha Ran and Carlos binding some books during our first artist in residence. So this is actually the building that PCA first purchased. And this was the building we were first placed in when we started at Partnership for Community Action. And it used to be a chicharroneria. I love this sign here and the Orozcos. Funny thing is when Carl and I were brainstorming ideas for RisoLana, I didn't know much about Riso, and neither did Carl. We just knew it was a form that we wanted to, we knew it was accessible. We knew about some of the community organizing aspects of it, but the technical aspects and the whole world of Riso was very new to us. And I had proposed the idea of just OOO for RisoLana, not knowing that out of office is like the hugest, like really great Riso space. So that was great that we didn't choose that name. So that building actually, Orozco's moved and it became this vacant building in the area that PCA actually was able to purchase. They own this building. So thinking about the South Valley, which we won't go into too much detail about this, but it's an area where my parents grew up. I live a block away. Carlos grew up in the South Valley. It's an affordable place to live, and when you think about like affordability, you think about growing cities. There's all of that kind of comes along with that, right? In terms of how community can change. And so Partnership for Community Action really wanted to own this building and make sure that they had a stake in this community, and also they wanted to make sure that people who are working in the arts have a place there too. And they've been really investing in that. And so them investing in us is also investing in the South Valley in a way that's, you know, hopefully thoughtful and going to contribute to that kind of vibrant community in the area. So we are potentially going to be moving into this front building in the summer and kind of expanding a little bit, which is exciting. So those are some conversations there. This is where we keep our guillotine cutter. So there's some of these trade-offs. So we have it in a closet right now, and we just cut it in the closet. It's very not OSHA safe, so we'll figure that out. But something I like to talk about is how partnerships inform our process and how the process informs the product. I think that there's a lot of excitement about a machine that can do really exciting things and can create some really exciting constraints for conversations. But the thing that's most important to me too is this idea of the people who are starting those conversations and the people who are creating those constraints, and then being stewards of those, right? So it's one thing to be like, here's something, try it, but it's another thing to be like, well, let's talk about that now. Let's discuss what that was, right? What did you experience? Let's partner up and talk about that, right? So like, for me, thinking about RisoLana for our space, the gathering space, that warm wall on a winter day, is the risograph printer, but it's also kind of the people who are kind of facilitating those conversations. So again, we are in our 4th year. This is my daughter. So my daughter was born like the same year we started RisoLana. I am a glutton for punishment, like starting a Riso space and like a family at the same time. But it's been really great just seeing her grow up around this like space and be connected to the arts. And in our 4th year, that's also something for me that I remind myself is that we are a toddler of a space, and we have to exist in that excitement around the curiosity for opportunities. So when we introduce ourselves to people, we'll move over a little bit into like the actual people, right? We talk about people and partnerships. RisoLana, we kind of operate with this like key holder kind of mentality. Seeing how we are with PCA, people need access to the space. It's really about who has a key to this space. So there's myself. Instead we introduce ourselves, we just scan our face into the Riso and print it out. This is like early Napster days. Someone was like, ASL, and I'm like, send a pic. This is really bad. But I didn't have a camera, so I just like scanned my face and then like sent it to this person. So like, I always thought that was like a nice way to be like, oh, here's a photo of me. So there's myself, there's Carlos, and Carlos is the lab manager. Katrina's a key holder, and she is an incredible book designer, and she's a community designer, so she'll be there she's usually there to support people. Gus Tafoya is a project manager. Milia Johnson was a project manager early on, and then Carl Orozco, who is a co-founder, and then Carl's a guest artist now, and that's how the collaboration is kind of working. So thinking about community, just a couple of photos of projects we've worked on at RisoLana and how we've activated this space. And so this is a partnership with the University of New Mexico. We worked with Akshita Shivankmar, who was an architecture professor and planning professor at UNM, and she was doing some prints with me over the course of probably like 6 months, and we had been in conversation about a workshop. And then the opportunity arose for these students. They had 5 groups of students, and they were doing a socio-political periodic table of elements. And so they came in and they did some consultations with us, and then they printed these posters, and every group had a unique project that they worked on. This is just one of many. So they printed those. Picture of my dad actually helping, and my partner Ginny helping us hang some shelves at RisoLana. This is a budding relationship with the George O'Keeffe Museum, so we're working with their artists in residence to create a series of books. And so our first conversation with them was a check-in, where we just have people put everything on their, like that they have on them on the scanner bed, scan it, and then we just talk about the objects they brought in. So it's like this touchstone kind of conversation starter. This is Haley Greenfeather working with elementary school and making zines. And whenever we work with an artist, we have a process where we talk about what like the school wants or the client wants. We kind of identify that. We connect with an artist who we think would work well in that context, and we talk through them about that. But the way we converse around the topic or like the final product that they make is then working with Carlos to develop curriculum materials and print those things out and test them out, and then they teach their workshop. This is us during our Artist in Residence final show with Carmen Salam. She created this really incredible comic we don't have any longer, it's out of print, but it's called Lesbians. It's a really great book. And then this is another project we work on called Typesetting the Movement. So being a risograph print space, you know, there's a lot of opportunities where people are wanting to make signs of protest, people are wanting to express, you know, maybe their anger, their outrage, or to just protest something that's happening. And we knew as an organization, we weren't going to be able to, as designers and artists, to try to keep up with every single thing, nor did we really want to. We wanted to be a space where people could be able to have access to that. So Carl and I, as we developed this workshop, I didn't develop the concept with Carl. It was more about the foundation of like what it was that we offered and how we offered it. And then Carl and Amelia developed this typesetting workshop where they have a bunch of type printed out, and people are using the scanner bed. So that was some of the constraints we had. It has to be accessible for people to do within a couple of hours, it has to be fast, and it has to be fun and kind of provide people with the opportunity for conversation. So this is the group that we worked with. The way we do this is we do it kind of maybe 3 times a year, and then as people want to use it, they can kind of reach out to us. But we invite community organizations to come first for free, and then we open it up on Instagram for people to come and access the workshop for free. And I'll go through this pretty quickly, but in terms of the roots of RisoLana, When I talk about spaces, the thing that's really been like embodied for me as a young person growing up in a place where, you know, access to the arts was something that I didn't realize was like a huge privilege just because of this organization that existed. There was nothing really like this in my town. Like this existed in my town, right? But like had this not existed, I don't know if I would have had the same access, right? And so Working Classroom is a nonprofit arts and theater organization. So they do visual art and theater. That was started in 1988 by Nan Elsasser. So this is Nan here. And her main vision for Working Classroom was to have a space where young people who might not have access to the arts can come together and get really high quality art training. So they had visiting artists come in from like SEIC, from DePaul, from NYU, and we were working with these artists in the summer to really create work, right? So we were learning craft, but then another thing that Nan really had at the heart of the organization that I learned about, this is me when I was like 12, working on a play, is that at the heart of the work we do, there's a lot of research and writing and reading that's part of the process, right? So you're creating and you're formulating your ideas around the work that you're making, but then you're also having the tools to really eloquently express them. And so this play was a play we worked on with the Tectonic Theater Project using moment work. It was about domestic violence, and we did story circles where we shared our own stories. And then we also did interviews with people, and then we created the theater based on that. So, you know, just thinking about the roots of RisoLana and that kind of identity behind that, Working Classroom had a huge impact. And so, in terms of that impact, it also connected me to people. And it's just like thinking about valuing relationships that you feel aligned with, and really leading forward with what you can do with those as artists and creators has always been this thing that I've appreciated about RisoLana. So, in 2018, Partnership for Community Action, before they built their building, they had funding through the Kresge Foundation to do visual art making and research that was to help inform creative placemaking. And so I was tasked with hiring artists to come to Working Classroom to teach, to create these visual representations of place, or to do research that was engaged in the arts. And so we were working with 8 Working Classroom students and these are like teenagers, to create this artwork. And so Carl Orozco, this is the co-founder, he was referred to me as a really incredible artist to work with. And so I hired Carl, and we worked on this project together. And the students did interviews with people along the Isleta corridor, and they made these loops. So based on observations and interviews, they made these loops about these businesses along Isleta. So these are our neighbors at RisoLana and at Partnership for Community Action. So students made these animations as part of their work. The funny thing for me, in retrospect, looking at this, I'm like, these would make really great risograph prints. This would just be an incredible riso. So there's that project. And then in 2018, well, this is in 2012, so this is when Carlos and I met. And I was invited to be a teaching artist for this digital mural. So it was a collaboration with the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and the National Museum of Mexican Art. And we were making this digital mural. It was probably as big as, a little smaller than this projection. But essentially, we interviewed people in Albuquerque, and then Carlos made over 100 like vector images representing the stories we were telling. Fast forward to 2018, that same grant with Kresge, we were going to make some work for Day of the Dead with a partner organization called Three Sisters Kitchen. And I was like, I really want Carlos to work on this project. And so Carlos worked with these same students, and they created some traditional papel picado, and then they also created these beautiful digital images that were laser cut that then got hung on this food justice organization's windows that tell stories around people who have died due to injustices around water. And so these hung on their windows for probably like 4 years. I don't know if they're still on. It sounds silly. They probably should take them down there, probably. But so that again is another image where I'm like, oh wow, this would make a great riso. This is before risograph printing was a thing for us. So really thinking about partnership, the way RisoLana ended up starting was Carlos and I were working on a project called Nutritional Values at the time, where we worked with 5 organizations. This is during the pandemic, where we created these stories based on personal stories around food insecurity, around living in poverty, and really dispelling myths around poverty. And people could order a meal at local restaurants, and they'd get this bag filled with like enamel pins and booklets Shout out to the Riso-Rama crew making all these this great ecosystem of like keychains. It's like that. But then you get this meal that had like conversation starters and whatnot. We were going to Riso print stuff, but we couldn't find a Riso printer. We're like, I don't know. And at the same time, Carl had moved to Albuquerque from New York for a teaching job. He's permanently relocated to Albuquerque. And Carl was working on a comic book that was a digital comic, and he was wanting to Riso print it. And we both were just like, there's not a Riso print shop. So you could read this text thread. This was our little text thread. Give you like a minute. I'm not gonna read out loud. That's me. What's this idea of like a cascading? So I had some grant funding at the time, and I was like, yeah, let's buy a Riso printer. And so we decided to buy it, we had those conversations, and Carlos got to make the Riso poster for nutritional values, and we had a Riso printer. So this is how we ended up at Partnership for Community Action. Through all of these relationships and all these opportunities to create these projects, and then to make it happen. So I really feel like the process in which we work is kind of at the heart of that, but then like being open to the opportunities and being thoughtful about how we connect with people about that. And so a little bit more into the weeds around some of the like processes and how that comes about. I think it's important to share kind of how Carlos works with people more directly, because I think that another thing that's really important to me is that I am product oriented. I like to have like a thing that you can look at and be happy and proud of that you made. But I can't come at the cost of like community building. It can't come at the cost of like people having a crappy time while working on it. That's just not how I am. I worked in comms for a while, and it's just like the worst experience. So it's like those two have to be equal. And it can't also be like feel good, touchy-feely, like, oh, we're building community, and then people don't walk away with anything that's tangible at the end either. I'm not that person either, so that balance is really difficult, and I feel like this is where Carlos comes in as like an incredible collaborator, so I'll pass it on to you.
Hi everyone. So actually, perfect send off to that point. I think these right now are kind of like the manifestations of a lot of what Michael just talked about. Trying to find entry points and ways for people to engage with Riso, but then also in making things for the community with the community, whichever community that may be, right? Because that's very big. So it's like specific groups that they want to engage with. And so these are kind of the main, I guess, like buckets or pillars, either one, to explain like how we kind of break it down, either through our twice-a-month events of 30 under 30, 2 colors, 3 prints, $30, 1 color print writer where you learn how to do zine layout. Our residency programs from our program that we do once a year, starting from June to November, or mini residencies, as we call them, where we have one person who focuses on coming into RisoLana multiple times for a project that they're doing or they're doing with another client. We have more straightforward consultation and client work. One of the things that we think is really important is having people in the space. So we don't try to operate as a print-on-demand model just because we have to have the artists in the room. We have to make sure that people are making those decisions in real time, because if y'all know Riso, you know that it has quirks, and trying to explain those to people who've never done Riso is difficult and unnecessary. It's much more magical as they get to see it's going to do that, and so expect it for it to do that. And so through consultations, either you have a project that you know you want to do or you want to figure it out. You're in the room kind of problem solving with us, and we're problem solving with you. And then that leads to client work where you either have experience or are manifesting that consultation project. We have our partnership and project and community workshops, which those, like Michael mentioned, is a lot of us either reaching out to artists who can host a workshop or connecting organizations who want to have a workshop with other artists in the community. We also invite certain artists to print with us. For specific events, I think, like Michael said, like similar to product-oriented, it's also like an event being a product in and of itself, like trying to bring people together for a specific thing. This is Jason Garcia, traditional, very amazing printmaker, observing every single one of the prints that came out of the cheese, which is kind of intense. And then we also have talks and demos of people coming through this space. Funny enough, one of the people in the exhibition, Julianne Mario Villegas, talked at RisoLana. And they were fantastic to have because people get to be exposed to like what other people are doing with Riso, but then also like their philosophies behind it, radical self-indulgence, is like still in my head, and is like super important. So to kind of distill everything that Michael talked about, like it's always at the forefront of what we do to figure out what is the end result and how is that true to the person's vision, the organization's vision, the group of people's vision. And it always starts with the question of, what is your project about? Not what are you printing, what colors are you using, how many copies are you trying to make kids? What is your project about? Because like that will determine everything, all those little details, all those things that are like important and necessary, but they're things that come later on. The thing that's always going to be important throughout is like what you want to come out of it. And that's something that we hold true. This is me and Charlie Bulkey working on a project for Bright Spaces, Welcome Places, which is an organization that focuses on creating welcoming spaces for queer people in Albuquerque through decor and kind of just like posters and art. And so at the end of the day, the purpose was to create these posters that would be hung up in clinics to make kind of just the environment a little bit more queer friendly. And they wanted to work with Charlie, and Charlie does not work digitally. So it was trying to find not a method of teaching Charlie how to use Illustrator in a week. It was about how does Charlie work and how can we meet them halfway. Luckily, Sharpie and Whiteout work great with Riso, so it was really fantastic to just kind of like work within their process and make a project that was respectful to their way of working, but also let them experiment, because it wasn't forcing them into like a completely different medium. It was just translating their work. And then one of the projects that I'm going to talk about for most of the time, is one that we did with Friends of the Orphan Science, which is an organization that focuses on preserving historically important kind of signage in Albuquerque, because we have a lot of it, the historic Route 66. And so this is the early steps of this project that would then become new iconic signs. The image on the left is early experimentation between Lindsay Fromm, the executive director, Michael, and Katrina, where they were trying to figure out how can we have what would eventually become 15 artists engage with filling these structures, these cabinets with artwork, so that people are like interested in their potential. How can we do that in a way that's like accessible for the artist, but also interesting and fun? And so on the right was the final result, the initial final result that we were trying to aim for. It was this aesthetic of like vintage postcards. Showed both the front and the back of the signs, as well as like some of the landscaping that was happening behind them, to kind of show how they could be revitalized in like abstract or very literal ways. That was going to be up to the artist. We were just trying to create a template that was accessible for everyone. With the end result of them also being fine art prints. This being kind of like an example that Lindsay found to kind of show one of the original kind of documentations of one of the signs in its heyday, but then also just try to connect it to like what we were trying to do with the signs themselves. And so I think Michael touched on it a little bit, where at the end of the day, it wasn't just about making the prints. It wasn't just about printing them. It wasn't just about like maybe color separating for people. It was about developing this process that 15 artists with each of their own unique backgrounds, own unique needs in working with Riso were going to go through. And we ended up with this kind of general template where it was an introductory workshop where they would be introduced to the process, who RisoLana was, who FOS was, then a group critique session so that they could see how other peers in their kind of groups were working on their signs. Then they would have like a feedback session with Katrina to kind of just point out Riso red flags, because again, even though we're like going back and forth with like the important part isn't the fine art print, you still want the fine art print to uphold their ideas and uplift them through Riso, rather than it just being, well, it's on Riso. We don't want that to be the end result. Then they would have time to refine. Then they would have a 2-hour proofing session with me, where regardless of their skill level with Riso or with like maybe like digital editing, they would color separate everything, proof it to the point where that would be the end result for a mass like printing session. And so this is an example of like the early workshops. Here they were introduced to like the history of the signs,
the kind of like importance and the potential that these structures have, as well as having kind of time to just be overstimulated by the amount of potential that they could actually like work within. On the right is kind of an example of a workbook that was also developed between FOS and Katrina, where it's like a really fantastic example of how Riso wasn't just the end result. It wasn't just a fine art prints. It was also used to make teaching material. So it was used to make thumbnails and also had information. It also had just places for people to write down notes. It was like this kind of kit for them to be going through the workshop with, and hopefully to walk away with and be able to reference and be able to share with each other. On the left is another example of like another entry point to how we were having people kind of like think about, you know, what these prints were going to be, because those were to scale and they had to consider, you know, the importance of a vintage sign. You're going to see, like, very literally, if you saw this on the road and you're driving past it, you have to be able to read it and not crash, and then also be able to like enjoy it without needing to stop. Or if you want to stop, why are you stopping? All those considerations of like vintage signage, they were asked to play with all that. And then another example of using the workbook. And so after they kind of had time to kind of come up with some ideas and refine them and have a group critique session, they were able to kind of come back to me and really proof them. And a lot of the time that meant like actually making the risograph files. This example being on the left, Joseph Stacy, one of the participants, worked in collage and paper cutouts. And then on the right, it's kind of like the finished result. And it was this kind of interesting process where they were way more comfortable shrinking and enlarging things on a Xerox than they were touching a computer. So like that's the method that we had to use primarily, or that's where we had to start with. Nevertheless, they were still a very capable artist, and so it was about working within their skill set, which required kind of this process of like going through scanning their image, isolating the parts that were going to be sunflower and fluorescent pink, isolating the elements that would be the rest of it, considering what coloring the structure was going to have, because at the end of the day, this project was about like highlighting these structures and these signs. So like you have to also consider them, if anything, just in color, but think about how they can be revitalized. All that to say, like whether or not they 100% knew how to do the separation themselves, the end result was just guiding them through like what parts are going to be sunflower, what parts are going to be navy, what parts are going to be yellow, what parts are going to be pink. And so it was working within what they could do, and I keep saying that over and over again, but that's like at the heart of what like consultations become, and it's trying to get people to like an end result of what they know that they want, or kind of like their vision, and helping them get there so that the skill set isn't something that holds them back. We try to not be a space where it's like you have to have a certain skill set in order to engage with us. We want everyone to be able to engage with Riso and what they want to make. And so this is the result. Like that was one person for 2 hours, repeated that for 15 people, each of them working very differently, each of them thinking about this in a very different way. And it all kind of like ended in a SAT style setup where everyone was editioning their prints, because these prints are going to be editioned and then collected and then given in portfolios. Because again, they were fine art prints, and this was one of those things that came about continuously talking with Lindsay from, and kind of considering like what's the best way to display these, what's the best way to kind of demonstrate these and really like show that. One of the further end results was taking the files themselves and cutting them in vinyl and then draping them over the existing signs. And so the interesting thing about this is that there was a moment where Lindsay was asking for the non-Riso files. And that was like a weird question to me, because some of these signs did not exist outside Riso. Because the artists were thinking in Riso, some of them were really excited to be working in this medium and could not think outside of like, I want to use these colors, I'm designing for these colors. So Joseph's, for example, like even though they had that like paper cutout, the digital files only existed for Riso. They only existed in this Riso-fied format. Likewise with Roberta? Yeah, that's Roberta's. Blanking on the last name. But Roberta's like, that collage didn't exist until we met up together and created it together. The further kind of like steps to this was also an exhibition at One Civic Plaza in Albuquerque, which is like the City Hall's new gallery, where all the signs were displayed and all the artworks were displayed, along with something that was really important about FOS and RisoLana was that people engaged with them in this kind of like very literal kind of like school book kind of mentality, where it's like, what would you do with these signs? What would you do with the potential of a sign? What do you think is important for signage? What would you want? Because a lot of people in Albuquerque are constantly engaging with these signs, they're constantly driving past them, degraded, possibly not kept well, but understanding that they're part of the scenery, they're part of the skyline, very literally in a lot of places. So it's like asking people what they would also want and making them recognize that they have an ability to kind of see something for those signs. Another kind of layer to that was then the culmination of like this book that I have here, and we'll be able to show later, which is like an entire like just documentation of the project itself, from the initial conversations to the purposes of the grant, I think, and then also some sections for you to also fill in your notes. I think that's the funniest thing is like we could not get away from turning this into a workbook. So it was like really important that people constantly are thinking about not just seeing this thing, not just being like, oh, that's nice, but also like being asked, what would you want? And Riso being this like really great medium for mass producing these, but then also making it in a way that's like true to what was happening. There's a lot of going to Riso, coming back, coming to Riso, coming back. And yeah, and that's kind of like, like that is truthfully like a project that I like talking about because it put our kind of, I want to say like what we consider our process to be, like on a lot of caffeine. It was incredibly fast, and it was repeating it over and over and over again without being inconsiderate of like what the artist wanted, what our partner organization wanted, and trying to hold a lot of these things, recognizing that it's possible, and still kind of making sure that we get to do all that compromise and make something nice, pretty, vibrant at the end of the day. To the point of Michael said, like something tangible to walk away with. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, and if you all are curious about organizations, these are the websites to the organizations. And this is like a small sampling of who we work with. But again, like I think like just anyone interested in like risograph and starting your own space or how you're thinking about that, like there's I think something about just, you know, the machine is a really great thing, but like I think don't discredit the relationships you have and the processes that you've developed to really like lean into how you want to run a space. Because I think that's the most valuable thing. Because people are going to really be drawn to that and be excited about that. And like Lindsay and I taught together like 10 years ago when I first moved back to Albuquerque, and that relationship maintained, right? And then there's an opportunity where funding does come. So like, you know, if you have questions about that too, like I'd love to be transparent about all of that. You know, I think people resonate with that idea and want to support those projects. And then it's just knowing that you have the capacity to do that. This is like the most important thing I think I want to say is like making sure that you are at a place where you can do that in a healthy way is really important. Because I think sometimes if you find that funding and those opportunities, it could, you know, if you're not prepared for that, it could really result in things that aren't the healthiest. And I've seen that. So I think it's important just to remember that those skill sets and process and relationship are super important. So yeah, with that, if you all have any questions, thanks.
Is this y'all's full-time endeavor, or do you have other things that you do, you know, for your bills?
That is a really good question. I know I get, speaking for myself, this is part-time job with heavy quotes because it's very consuming, but in a good way. I mostly do freelance graphic design and graphic design and motion graphic design. That's what I do to pay the bills, but this is also a thing that's like, I don't know, it helps in a very cathartic way. Like,
Yeah. It seems like if your job is somehow related, there's, you know, symbiosis between it where it's beneficial.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the thing about RisoLana. It's interesting because like I find that there's this dynamic of, so we have a project manager, and then we have another person who gets paid hourly. Cross gets paid hourly, but the hours are flexed too in terms of like how many hours you work. It's project based. But then there's also like support systems, so we're always trying to find ways to bring people in to either do work trade or volunteer or offer people to get paid. And I think our rates are highly competitive, but we're not trying to create this space where it's about a salary. We're being really transparent about that. So it's about people who are wanting to also be working artists. Like our project manager just quit his full-time, pretty secure job at a great place in public radio to be like, I want to pursue my art career, and I see RisoLana as an opportunity for me to pursue both. So that feels good to me. I work mainly in documentary filmmaking, so I'm a videographer, and I'm also a producer. So I think that some of those producing skills definitely get utilized in this capacity. Yeah, so I don't know, right now I'm in the space where I'm trying to figure out a way to still manage RisoLana by bringing in people who are really capable and can live into those ethos. Yeah, I definitely have a day job. And the thing that's really helped us though, and I'll be super transparent, is we have relationships with one funder in particular who's like, a couple weeks ago they were like, hey Michael, we just gave you $10,000 for RisoLana. Like, that to me is great. I don't write grants. I don't want to put us in an organizational position where we're trying to deliver based on a grant. Because I think it's not fair to a lot of people in a staff where you're making those decisions and they're like, oh no, I have to deliver.
Do you feel like you two being one of the only resources in New Mexico are able to accommodate the demand, or do you feel like there's not enough demand or too much demand?
Gosh, follow-up question. So there's next chapter.
So not
Yeah. So so we're moving into a bigger building, so I think we will be able to kind of reach. I think there's a demand, not just in Riso. I think it's just in terms of storytelling, spaces for people to gather within like the arts. And so there's the next chapter. UNM actually purchased a risograph printer.
The University of New Mexico.
Oh yeah, University of New Mexico. And we're in a relationship with them. We used to see a lot more students come through, but not as much. Now it's like maybe students who graduated and need access to that resource. And then Explore Science Center and Children's Museum, they actually consulted with us, and we do some drum sharing with them. And they work mainly with teenagers. So there's some kind of symbiosis happening in Albuquerque. And then our artist in residence, actually, Ray Kim, who just completed her artist in residence, she was like so into the process and everything. She's a tattoo artist. She had an opportunity to buy a Riso printer, so she bought a Riso printer. So she's kind of operating in like the punk DIY scene too with her printer. So in a lot of ways, I'm like, I think there should be more of them. And if there's less demand for us, that means there's more capacity for us to do what we do well, really well. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I'm excited to introduce a few of the panelists that we have here today. We're going to go ahead and get started with a few of our workshop participants. And so later this afternoon, we're excited to offer a workshop by ASA, who's here. ASA is an independent publishing project founded by Vicente Velasquez III and Juan Carlos Muro in Fresno, California. It was established in 2023, and ASA focuses on amplifying the voices of the Central Valley through self-publishing, zines, artist books, and other editions. Their work emphasizes the importance of creative autonomy and community storytelling. So if we could go ahead and welcome Vicente Velasquez and Michael Rosales. Get started? Oh, you want to do everyone right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do all the bios.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So we do have a few other panelists I'm excited to introduce. We have Soft Spots Riso, who want to give yourselves a wave. And this is represented by Gino and Chris Wright of Soft Spots Riso. It's a Dallas-based risograph press dedicated to fostering creativity, collaboration, and accessibility in independent printmaking and publishing. They were founded in 2022. Soft Spots provides community access to risograph printing, workshops, and resources that support local artists in exploring zines and bookmaking. And we have Shirley Press over here. It was founded by Grant Shirley Press is a Houston-based independent publishing project focused on producing Riso-printed zines that explore themes of liberation, power, and joy. Their work includes cookbooks, card games, mini broadsides, and more, inviting readers to engage with their surroundings and discover delight in the everyday. So, excited to have you. We have Tyler Rico, based in Austin, Texas. Tyler is a designer whose practice takes a process-based approach to landscape and memory through intimately scaled artist books and publications. His work explores the relationship between abstraction and documentation. Tyler's work has been featured in major fairs, including Printed Matters LA Art Book Fair and the Detroit Art Book Fair. So we'll go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm Gina, this is Chris, a little bit soft spots. Yeah, so just a little bit about us. So I'm Gina Dalchin, and I've been, I guess, sort of a little background on me, and I guess like my kind of like introduction with Riso is that I've been doing, been very interested in kind of like, especially right after college, getting super into the local zine community that was happening around Denton in Texas. And really just loved exploring the format and sort of using that as a tool of expression for just the work and the stories that I'm interested in kind of like telling, and just I love the community that's kind of like built through that and just connecting with other people through zines and through trading zines. And so kind of proceeding through a lot of that work, I was just very fascinated with how risograph printed work looked. I always wanted to see what my work would look like risograph printed. We'll flash forward many years later. I now work at the Dallas Contemporary that's in Dallas. It is a museum that's a Kunsthalle model. We're a nonprofit. We have rotating exhibitions and programs that are all free and accessible, and through kind of working in that space, kind of getting a little bit inspired and just sort of when you have so much space, what do you do with it? And so finding all the programs that they're doing was kind of like bringing in a lot of collaborators and opening up to other nonprofits and other organizations was pretty inspiring to me. We now also organize the Dallas Art Book Fair that happens there annually. Many of you have not heard of Dallas Art Book Fair, please come. It's every March. It just happened about a week or so.
Yeah, so we came to meet through Zine Fests. I totally made a zine just to like flirt with him, you know, and like ended up at the Zine Fest. And then eventually we ended up taking a Riso printing class together. And that's kind of what lit the fire under our asses. But my history, I went to UT Dallas and I did a lot of film photography, painting, mixed media work. I used the community darkroom at that university when I was graduating. I asked professors, where can I develop film now? And realized there were no community darkrooms in our area, so I built one. I actually bought a smaller darkroom and then grew it into a large community darkroom, and I sold that company a couple of years ago after owning it for 5 years. And I feel like with the darkroom, I just wanted to do my own work for free. You know, I just didn't want to break the bank. So receiving a check from that was not something I ever anticipated, and I just immediately invested in Riso. So we had taken our Riso class together right about the time that I started to get out of the darkroom and was having that like tragic breakup. And very quickly, we're kind of hooked. Like, should we buy our own machine? Oops, I bought one. It's coming in the mail next week. Oh, and I bought more clothes too. So it just kind of like expedited, and I think having our artist background, it was really important for us to keep that kind of community darkroom idea, do that kind of like college encouraging idea, combine it with zines, combine it with all of our friends who make art, and just kind of like make it more accessible.
So, this is how we initially kind of started out. So, you know, towards the end of 2022 into 2023, this is the very first kind of iteration of Soft Spots. This was in Chris's house. For the longest time, this was in her kitchen.
Yeah.
And that is Momo. He is a good boy. He's very fancy with a bow tie. All the colors are listed under there. That is not what we initially started out with. This is sort of like the palette we've kind of grown to have.
Yeah, like that's always what I preach to people who come to our classes, and they're like, wow, I love Riso, I want to buy one. I'm like, no. I mean, you can, but buying colors costs a lot of money, and building that palette can be very expensive. And if it just existed in our kitchen, we probably only have 4 colors. But since so many people are using it and helping us to, you know, grow with this, we're able to spend that kind of money to buy more colors and to do some crazy things that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Yeah. And so initially starting with the SO5130, and then very quickly just doubling up with the see?
Yeah, so we Riso printed one time and then bought the SF5130. I think if anything, like growing up on Tumblr as an illustrator, I thought like one day when I'm a real artist, I'll have my work Riso printed. And like it wasn't enough. I was like, actually we need to do this all the time. And so we got that machine, realized it's a little bit smaller size. It doesn't do like a full legal paper. It's a little bit smaller. And around that same time we bought that machine, if anyone's ever looking for a Riso, there's a Riso dealer website, and I just like put in my info, and they called me 6 months later, asking if we wanted this NZ. And I was like, okay, sure.
And so very early on, again, so you can kind of see this is in Chris's house. So these are a couple of friends of ours, and just we very quickly, I mean, at least starting with like close friends, trying to encourage them.
That first year, they were at home, and we knew that we were going to move to a studio and do a community model. But since there are no Riso studios in Dallas, no one knows how to print. So I feel like we spent that first year like getting our friends trained up and getting them like stoked. So it was mostly just us like free printing for our artist homies. Maybe they would throw some cash at us. But I think that first year was like us really building up our skill to be able to take on artist projects while also like getting people hyped.
Yeah, because it was a very fun process because we were learning at the exact same time as everybody else was as well. So there was so much fun kind of like problem solving and us kind of like collaborating to figure out like how we can work these machines and how, you know, people coming in with different approaches and different types of artwork, like figuring out how we could kind of figure out printing that, I think just made all of us like much better printers and much more, you know, capable of the machines. So then in 2024, this is when we had started to move into a new space.
Yeah, so the darkroom that I had owned was bought by somebody else, also named Chris, and I'm on contract for them as a consultant until 2 months. But he was worried that I wouldn't come around the darkroom anymore and gave us a deal to have our Riso studio inside of the darkroom. So we started out there.
Yeah, so you can kind of see this little video. This was the tiny corner that we kind of occupied with both the machines and I'm Smith. And
Yeah, but I think our kind of idea moving into there was like, affordable rent, whatever. But really kind of crossing some of those boundaries. I was really stoked to be in the darkroom, hoping like maybe people will be making like enlargements and I can take like their analog photographs and put them on the Riso machine, or I can force all the photographers who come through to like look at my scanner out back and kind of get people inspired for what they could do. Okay, we were there for 3 months. And I'm a tattoo artist, that's what I do full time. I was leaving my studio and going to a private studio, and we have this huge air-conditioned shop, and I was always like, I don't know what we're gonna do back there. No idea how to fill this space. And then kind of all at once I was like, oh duh, I put the Risos there, I won't be paying 3 rents anymore. So I just asked the guy at the darkroom, will you hate me if I move? And he was like, get out, please. I need to expand back here. So we ended up we're renting, it's a lit workspace, but it looks like a little house. And the front of it is my private tattoo studio. I have a couple extra beds for like friends and homies, Keynote tattoos. And then the back portion of our studio is an air-conditioned shop where we Riso-Rama print.
Yeah. And it's a pretty good space. And so moving into there is kind of how we, I think, fully started to like actually embrace kind of this community model that we had always kind of wanted. I mean, another issue with the, I guess, working in the corner at the photo lab was just the idea that our hours couldn't be as consistent as we wanted. Like we wanted to be able to have like pretty good access.
Yeah, like we would have to swing over after work if someone made an appointment to print. You know, like it was nice that they had regular hours, and our hope was that people could come during that business's regular hours. But very quickly we learned that our people using the Riso rentals are going to need assistance.
And so, just some examples of like some things we made. I think that once we kind of got into our space, we started to really explore. It felt like we were getting much more confident with our Riso-Graph like printing, like our processes. But then we kind of started to play a little bit more with, especially in terms of like bookmaking and publishing, really just trying to push our boundaries a little bit more, or kind of really embrace kind of experimenting.
Yeah, and I think with our Riso model, we're not trying to make income. You know, we're just trying to break even, to make our own art for free. You know, so it kind of gives us access to like be wild on the Riso and try different things and make mistakes without, dollar signs flashing in your eyes, which is really great to be able to kind of like remake masters, or maybe you make 100 prints of something and you hate it, reprint it without feeling as guilty.
Yeah.
So.
And so something as well that's been kind of interesting. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So we very quickly started taking on remote printing projects. Just people reaching out to us like, hey, can you print this? Can you print that? And occasionally we would do it. I feel like these kind of clients are easier than my photography clients. But being an artist, we love to have that kind of control over our own artwork, and would very quickly offer that to people. So if they hit us up saying like, I want to make this print, usually like, will you come to the studio today? Do you like this blue, or do you like cornflower blue? Should we try the aqua or the mint? And kind of have them be a part of the process, because it's really up to our interpretation. Like the way that we each print is so different, and our individual artistic interpretation of the Riso and your image is going to be so much different. So we started doing something called sponsored artists, where pretty much I just bully my friends into making art for free without worrying about the cost. We usually calculate their printing costs and material costs, and then we take a portion of what they make and we sell it to pay for their costs. It's really nice. Like our friend Agnes made like the bunnies up top. I used to watch him like really penny pinch every time he would print to be able to like make what he wants to make for whatever market is coming up. But I love his stuff. I feel like he has such beautiful work that translates really well that quickly I was like, stop counting pennies. Just make the work you want to make and we will reimburse that.
And so then we could also finally formalize sort of like figuring out how these classes could work. So we established a website. We made it so that, originally we had 3 different levels of classes. Now we've just kind of combined the first 2 levels into a single one. And we try to have them with somewhat regularity.
Yeah, I feel like we do it pretty often. Similar to that question I asked earlier, I feel like we can't fully extend to the need of our community. As of lately, it's like all of our classes will be booked up, and I'm tired. I've been teaching for years, I'm so tired of this. But we're kind of, I don't know, I want to accommodate this like need and desire, and not everyone who learns to print comes back regularly, so it's always good to get more people trained. But we picked up one kid, he's not a kid, he's 21 or 22, but he's a child to us. And he would hang around the Riso studio all the time and ask them, to get the trash or sweep for y'all.
He was one of the very first people that we ever had a class with.
Yeah, so we've really gotten him to take on some of the classes, which is nice, because when it comes to like printing projects, we're not making a whole lot of money, but if he's teaching a class, I can guarantee that I can pay him money for that class that he's teaching. So this was one of the classes he taught. We usually do like a 2-color print, 20 copies, maybe 6 to 8 students in the class, and then at the end of class, everyone gets to swap their projects. And the idea of this class is that you will be at least fluent enough on the Riso machine to come back for a Riso rental and do it independently.
And so related to that, we also try to allow for assignment times. So within our Riso rental website, so people are able to select appointments and book some time to be able to come to the studio and print their own projects. Typically, since Chris is a full-time artist, like up at the front.
Yeah, I really like regular hours, kind of like a Monday through Sunday sort of thing where I have booked hours that I tattoo at the studio. So it's nice that people can come and do Riso rentals. They usually like pop in, say hi to me, go out in the back, and they have that kind of privacy to use the Riso and work on their project, but nothing's gonna burn down or catch on fire because I'm just a room away. So it's nice that I can assist if they need it, but they also, I don't know, I'm big on learning from experience. So I would love to like send people back there and like, go have fun, make mistakes. That's how you really learn stuff, but if it gets crazy, I will come help you.
Yeah, and so related to that as well, we have a monthly thing that we call Riso Club. Usually, sometimes we'll have like maybe like a small project in mind, but mostly just kind of encouraging people to show up with their projects just so that they can kind of engage with the process or just like witness the process in a way so that it makes it less intimidating if they do want to come back for a class or if they want to actually show up with a project with the intention of actually getting it printed. It often usually just turns into a little bit of a sketchbook club. It just kind of turns into a whole bunch of people just like doing like parallel play, like crafting and just like, messing with all their stuff together. but it has been very cool to sort of see like how that little Riso club has kind of like grown in terms of people who come back pretty regularly. And it's always just so cool whenever we see them coming to want to, you know, take a class, be a little bit more engaged and more involved, and it's very cool. Yeah. And all this to kind of say that, you know, it feels like relatively like young for us, I guess, like, and kind of like embracing this sort of like community kind of like model.
Yeah, but at least for us, I feel like Gino has so much experience from his job, and I ran a community darkroom for so long that this is like darkroom light for me, like the diet version. Like in terms of like equipment that I have to maintain, like it's 2 Riso machines. We have someone who services them in our area, whereas like a lot of my film equipment was like ancient, and if it would break, I would have to like FaceTime some dude from Australia and we could see. So it's nice that it's like very within our realm of what we're able to do.
Yeah, and just very excited to kind of see how we're going to be able to grow and expand it and accommodate it and just be able to use it and roll the changes of it, I guess. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I guess I can just pass this down. Do you want to move?
Alrighty, well hello everyone, my name is Vicente Velasquez. I am an illustrator and printmaker from Madera, California. I'm currently based in Fresno, California. I'm attending Fresno State, go Dogs, in hopes of earning my teaching credential. I decided to be very literal with this title of the presentation and title it Roots, since I wanted to very, very quickly talk about how we offer our risograph services and to our local community and kind of get to make some amazing projects and some really good friends along the way. I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to go ahead and breeze through them very, very quickly. When I say we, I am referring to Arroz is Arroz, or A is A, which is our publishing press that was founded in 2022 by my buddy Juan Carlo and I. He wasn't able to be here, unfortunately, but Carlo and I started working together back in 2020 when he moved back to Fresno. And I hosted his exhibition at my bookstore that I co-owned at the time. When the shop closed in 2022, he and I kept working together. We eventually met Claire while we were working on her project, which I'll delve into later. And from there, we just kind of connected with all these artists, and we just started building a small network of friends. And by offering them our printing services, design, and photography services. So I just kind of wanted to delve into our projects and how they came about, because our projects, we started making stuff before we even had a name or realized what we were doing, and so it just kind of happened a little bit naturally. So I wanted to like go through the process of our projects really quickly, and you can kind of see how AZA came to be something a little bit bigger. Juan Carlo's work, he's a graphic designer, again couldn't be here unfortunately. He graduated from Art Center in Pasadena. So this is some of his work. He runs his own personal studio called Studio Mala. Some of my work, which it looks like I didn't get a chance to update this, but yeah, I'm more of a self-taught illustrator. I always feel weird in these settings because I'm not like an art major or anything like that. I just kind of make stuff on the side. And it also feels weird to say like self-taught. I always feel like it's like, I don't want to say pretentious, but just like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people like, oh, I'm self-taught. It's like, all right. Cool. Anyways, so here's some work of Claire. She's an anthropology student at Fresno State. She had some recent exhibitions and some recent publications, including At the Hip, and she also just made a new publication with United Life in California, where she documented the big Fresno Fair, which is like, it's kind of a gimmicky thing that we have in our town. It's really interesting. This is our little office space in north central Fresno. Again, I'm going to really quickly speed through these projects. I want to give myself enough time for the last project, because although it's not Riso related, it really hones into like the community aspect, and it's pretty much how we started. Arroz is Arroz. Labradoodle is the first project Juan Carlo and I ever worked on. He hit up an old classmate named Jordan Bogash, and he just asked him to send over some doodles. We have a book fair coming up, we need to make something new. And so we ended up with this really cool project. We got a little bit ambitious with this one. We added fold outs, we taped the chipboards to the cover in the back. We wanted it to feel a little bit bigger. We printed 2-ups. We only worked scanner bed, which you guys will learn about later. And then we decided to shrink wrap it at the end. This was a big project for us at the time. We had no clue what we were doing, really. Like, I had made zines and stuff before, but we had never made something this ambitious before. We also had a really fun photo shoot where we had to coat the spine of the book with some peanut butter to get the Labradoodle to like bind it. And it was pretty fun. It was pretty eventful. Beautiful dog. Second project is our next publication. It's called Strung by Recollections. It was actually made by my roommate Viviana and I. Again, this is all very DIY. So yeah, she was just she's an Mexican-American poet from the west side of Fresno, currently wrapping up at Fresno City College, where she took a poetry class. And after she was done, she was like, hey, I know you're into printing. I was wondering if I could print my poems up. This project is like special to me because we truly had a chance to collaborate. Viviana picked out all the color palettes. She pulled a bunch of old family photos. Carlo designed the entire project. Pretty sure the half sheets were his idea as well. And then I found a little clam clip. So it was again a collective thing. And Viv was like super excited. We would like go home and like talk about it more. It was really fun time. And then she ended up getting really savvy with all the proofs and all the misprints. And she made these really cool dioramas of the printing process. The Riso drum and like the bolsa, those are like, I don't know, it's my favorite. And most of these titles will be available at our table tomorrow, so if you guys end up coming through, you guys can flip through them. I know the type is like really small and I'm zooming through these, so you'll be able to get a chance to actually like sit with them if you come by tomorrow. Another project we worked on was called Good News Television Forever, or GNTV-F for short. This was a collaborative process by Mike Adame and Max. Adame is a music school teacher, and Mike is a local artist who co-owns a bar that we frequent, and he just like makes this amazing video art on the side. And so for this project, they went under the moniker GNTV-F because they wanted this interactive process where people could flip. They had like this flip box where you can switch through channels. And so they had these channels titled Time, Integration, and Surprise. This was another fun collaborative project because we only knew about Mike Adame through the bar and through like the local music scene. He plays on all these bands, and so during like the pandemic, we saw him like uploading all these videos and photos of him projecting onto these old buildings like downtown. And Carlo and I would forward each other these posts and like, what the heck? Like, who is this guy? Like, we need to print with this guy. Like, his work is amazing. So all these people we're all fans of, you know, we're ultimately fans of them before we cold DM them to come print with us. So in 2023, we, once we kind of got our shit together, we got to print these CMYK risograph prints with stills from their videos. They came out a little bit gritty, but I thought that was kind of a look. We ended up rounding off the edges of the prints, and we slipped them into this vellum envelope, which we also printed on, and we tried to kind of mimic this like TV screen look. Turned out better than we anticipated. These are some photos from the actual exhibition. We made event flyers, printed some large format prints at FedEx, and we super last minute decided to make this graphic poster that you see on the far right. So it has what they call a brain and all these wires that were sitting behind all these old TVs. And we just thought they looked interesting. Like they're there was some like graphic element to it, which is why I loved collaboration. It offers like a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes. Like Mike and Max never imagined anyone would be interested in the wires behind the TV, and again, that's why I love like working with other people, because sometimes you're so hyper-fixated on what you are into that you fail to see that there might be something interesting in the back or something, right? Next project is titled Star Power by Arturo Alvarez, or Churro for shorts. Such a big fan of his work, so I decided to just cold DM him and see if he was interested in printing. This eventually resulted in Star Power, which is the title of this publication. Here's some spreads. He ended up going with the classic blue and fluorescent pink with the key layer to sort of trap everything. I get such a kick out of seeing people who predominantly work digitally see their work printed. You know, he got a really kick out of like seeing it come out of the printer. He has so much work. A large body of work, but it is all digital, so it was nice to see it get printed and color set and all that good stuff. And Churro took it upon himself to make these really cool promo pics. Again, another reason why I love collaboration. It always inspires both parties to think of like creative ways to show their now tangible items, right? So yeah, he just sent us, like, just posted these, tagged us, and just started sending them over. And I was like, yeah, like, cool. At the Hip by Claire Evans is our latest publication. We ended up developing a solid relationship with Claire, and she more recently became our third member of A is A. She's truly the glue that keeps us together, and she kind of brings Carlo and I down from like the clouds, because we'll spend an hour just talking about color palettes, and she's like, all right guys, like, what are we gonna pick? It's time to decide, like right now. And she's also like over us, so I'm talking about that shit. So as I mentioned earlier on, Claire has just she again just cold DM us to make a flyer design. And so naturally we convinced her to do all these other crazy things, and we're like, we should get vinyl for the show, we should try to print these large format prints and just like paste them around town, which I don't condone, but a lot of people saw them, and like more than like they would see like a social media post and then just scroll past, right? And then eventually they'll forget about it. So yeah, it was fun. Here's some renditions of the flyer, out in the wild, kind of some spots we more strategically picked to kind of place them, some like more like spots like around a cafe or like by the skate park or something that we felt like maybe our demographic would see. Here's the final vinyl. And we're fortunate that like, sometimes I complain that like, oh, we don't have a community in Fresno to like do these kinds of things, or I'm like, man, they don't get what we're doing or whatever. But sometimes there is some beauty in that, because like Fresno can kind of be like a playground. It's kind of like free game. Like we can kind of do whatever we want to do, and although people don't fully understand, we're like, you'll see, and we're fortunate enough that they're able to trust us to like put up this huge vinyl on this like historic like 100-year-old building that just looked, to me, it looks beautiful. Here's folks interacting with the vinyl during the exhibition nights. Here's some actual stills from the exhibition. And so again, she had just hit us up to do a flyer, and we just kind of went in and convinced her like, hey, well, maybe if you spend a little bit less on like, because she had funding for this, if you spend a little bit less on like the frames, maybe don't go as, because she wanted to deck the whole place out, maybe just do a couple big ones, a bunch of smaller ones, and then with the money that's left over, we can make a publication, and then we can sell that, and then we can make this much, and we'll just kind of keep this going. And that really caught her interest, and that's, I think, another reason why she continued to work with us. So now we've gathered like a small slush fund for her, and she's like, oh, I want to do this one-off project. And we're like, yeah, we have like $500-600 for you on the side, and you can totally do that. Again, the renditions of the flyer. So I thought it was pretty cool and worth talking about how we just kind of placed this sticker to update the already placed flyers and kind of let people know there's going to be a closing reception with a book release. Some of the flyers out in the wild. Again, strategic, going to the record store, going to the coffee shop, and kind of placing them where we know our demographic is more than likely going to be at. here's us working on the project. Claire took these really awesome behind-the-scenes photos of us, and I thought it was cool because every time we would meet up, we would get more and more ambitious. Like, oh, why don't we screen print the cover? Why don't we use gaffer's tape and like do this interesting binding? And I was like, well, how are we going to finish this in time? And it kind of forced us to not only problem solve, but Claire started, she's like, well, my friend screen prints, maybe she can screen print the covers for us. I'm like, okay, if she can do that, that'd be awesome. So her friend, super DIY in the backyard, just screen printed them, so you see them all like on the savannah drying out, which I thought it was a cool image, and it was very representational of like how we just like make it happen. Like however we can, we'll pull a favor, we'll reach out to a homie. Like you said earlier, it's kind of like pulling these favors, and like once we sell these, we'll pay you back, we promise. So we'll find a way to pay you back. You can come check out the Riso. We just don't have the money for it at the time, unfortunately, but we'll figure that out. And we're fortunate that people are trusting in us, and they're willing to like invest their time in our arguably silly little project, right? So here's the final rendition, which to me it always looks very grand, and like when you see all the mock-ups and like all the work I put into it, it doesn't feel as grand, but then once you see the final piece, it's like a nice portfolio piece, sure, it looks great, but to me what's more important is just, again, my favorite part is being able to collaborate and work with friends. That's just like that's the part I get a kick out of. Some more nice photos of these spreads. Some images of the closing reception, which we had a pretty good turnout given Fresno, it's kind of small. So we had a good turnout, we had a DJ, we had some t-shirts and stuff. It was really, really fun. And my point in showing you all this is not to like demystify the process, I guess, but to show how at the end of the day, it was literally just a group of friends making stuff. Like that's how I at least define it, right? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having us. We're so jazzed to be here, and it's super inspiring to hear from other Riso people. I'm going to be saying Rizzo, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm going to be saying Rizzo today, so when I say Rizzo, I mean Riso. We are Shirley Press, and today we wanted to talk about the three kind of tenets of our practice, which we are, well, I'm calling it the lunch framework. The sandwich of friendship, the sweet treat of zine, and the pickle of process. So, Shirley Press, we're an independent publishing project. We're based in Houston. This is Grant, and I'm Claire, and we are old friends, and that is how we collaborate. We're just really close friends. We met in college and have stayed friends ever since. And we started Shirley Press in 2021. It was still pandemic era, so we were kind of each other's bubble, so we just wanted to do something while we were hanging out in this sort of like weird and isolating time.
Yeah, it was really, it started as a way for just us to have an excuse to hang out and for us to go over to each other's places and talk and work on stuff and not go mad with boredom and cabin fever. So we'll say just a little bit about what our catalog is right now, and then we'll come back to some of these as we go through the slides. But so our first batch was Watch Out, and the first edition we did is down there. He's a little guy, and then the second edition up there, and these two minis over there. And these are very much about the place of Houston that we live in. It's a big, beautiful, crazy, wild city where our community's involved in a lot of different organizing spaces. I'm a planner by training, an urban planner, so I have this compulsion to think about the city of Houston and try to see it in different ways. So that's what those 3 are about. The most recent one is the Spotlight's Edge, which is about the movie Flubber. Raise your hand if you've heard of Flubber or watched Flubber. Oh, okay, good. We were wondering.
Like we're just wondering, oh my gosh, are we old? No, okay.
Yeah, so Flubber and was our most recent, and in the middle we have sort of a cookbook called A Very Good and Normal Relationship with Food, My Chicken Cheese Sandwiches, which is a poem prompts generator, Little Things Talk, and our game Picnic Time. So I think, and we'll say more about this, but again, the thing that ties these things together is our love of where we live and the specificity of that place, and helping people see Houston and see the everyday things around them in a new light, like it's the first time, feel a little bit of that kind of whimsy that is all around us. But the thing that our zine making practice is really centered on is our friendship. I mean, when you're friends with somebody for 14 years, I think we all have that forever friend. You have your own language, your own lingo, your own way of acting around each other. And so our zine making is kind of like putting that down on paper and inviting other people into that. And so what is our kind of friend culture? It is a lot about play. It is about trying to like stay in the beginner's mindset and, like I said, to see things for the first time, to allow yourself to be tickled by things, and to really, notice what's around you, to kind of surface how the things around you, even the everyday, maybe boring things, make you feel, how you feel in different spaces, kind of surface some of those reactions and assumptions, and then just delight in them, especially in a place like Houston. It's like, why is that like that? That's ridiculous. Like,
Why is there no sidewalk?
sense.
Yeah.
Why is there no sidewalk? So on and so forth. But to kind of have a sense of humor about it.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of this came from us being both really into walking. Like we're really into walking, taking long walks, and I think Grant introduced me to this, like walking as creative practice book, right? Yeah, just walking as a creative practice where you're noticing and you're really moving your body and you're really taking in and kind of experiencing and thinking about it. So a lot of this came from just wanting to be walking. Yeah. Okay, so the first project here, Picnic Time. Oh, that's me.
Well, they're watching the video.
Well, you don't watch the video. So Picnic Time is a game that we published in 2023. This kind of is the most pure expression of our spirit of collaboration. This is a game that's collaborative between 3 to 6 players. And this is something we wrote very much together. Sometimes Grant will do most of the writing and then I'll do the designing or whatever, but this is one that we really sat down and thought about a lot together because, we wanted to create this thing that was about play in the literal sense, but also, picnicking is an expression of, the pure act of eating with your friends, eating and bringing food and just munching and sitting in the park and having weird stuff happen to you in the park. So the way the game works, just really briefly, is each player gets a secret menu up here that has a snack, main, sides, bevs, and sweet. And the point of the game is you collect all these things on your menu, and the people around you at the picnic can help you collect them. They can sort of like trade with you, but you're all dealing with these conditions at the same time, like guitar guy increases his volume, or mosquitoes, or like the food enters the temperature danger zone, which maybe is like a thing that I am concerned about, but maybe no one else is. But like above a certain temperature, bacteria grows. Okay, so whatever. But this is a game. This is a game that is very playable. We spent a lot of time just sort of developing the structure of the game before we went to the design, which I think is essential. And we printed everything on the Riso. It was a very complex project, and I'm not sure I would recommend printing this kind of project on the Riso after the fact. We printed 12 up, so 12 unique cards per page. So then it was a question of registration and the movement of the print on the page, you know, as you print, kind of shifts a little. So when you're cropping it, okay, you can't crop the whole stack at the same time because the bottom of the stack is like 1/8 of an inch to the left. And it was very complex, but we love it. And people really play this game. Like, our community has really picked up this game and they play it with their friends.
I should say that we do not know technically how to write a game.
Well, we know now.
So there was very much like, will this even work? Like, will people play it? Will it even like make sense to people? But it did. I did get a couple texts that was like, hey, what happens if the dog, you know, if the off-leash dog happen, you know, and blah, 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 blah.
Well, the ambiguity, you know, it's part of it.
And people's like personalities really come out when you're confronted with a game where it's up to a lot of interpretation. Like the person on the right with the blonde hair was like, she was wanting to optimize the process in each course. Like, let's get everyone their full meal ASAP, and like was frustrated that some of the rules were unclear, and you know the woman in the middle was like, no, just do that if you want to. So it's fun to see people's personalities come out too. It was a lot of fun to make. We laughed so much making the game, and we hear about people laughing and just having a ton of fun playing it. It forces you to be silly and ridiculous.
And I think sometimes the things that make us giggle are the things that are the most successful. You know, when it makes us laugh, it tends to make other people laugh as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, more about our community. It is a lot of folks in the organizing space, but then also a lot of people in the art scene, and designers and urban planners, and a lot of people that are very like in their head, including myself. So one thing we try to do, almost will ourselves to do, is invite people to do things with our zines, and invite ourselves to do things with our zines. So so that's one of the big through lines with everything we make, even though they're all pretty different from each other, is, you know, go somewhere, observe this thing, fill out a worksheet. Or like, get your friends together, play a game, giggle, flip all the little pieces of this book around and make funny word combinations or touching word combinations. You know, where it's asking you to ask questions. They're all very, you're not just sitting and reading a book. We have an exception, but they're all pretty involved. So this is a fun one. This is my chicken cheese sandwiches, and it is a poem generator. There are 16,000 something, you know, word combinations possible in there, so you could make a unique combination every day for 44 years. It's a lot of fun to use. The combinations, some of them are like randomly super poignant. Like we've seen people that are at the tables where we table, like flip to a certain page, like, oh.
And then they go, and then they're like, ha!
Yeah,
They just
it's
sort of
really fun.
giggle, yeah.
It gets a range of responses. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. Kids like it. It's very fun. It's a toy, I think.
It's a toy.
Is there anything else you want to say about it?
I don't know, people use these as like creative prompts. I think that's pretty cool that, you know, we table at Zine Fest almost every year, and I love when people come back to our table the next year and they tell us like, oh, I got this last year, I really liked it, I do this with my daughter, and blah, blah, blah. I just think that's really touching, and it just really tickles me when people I don't know pick up these books, because in my head I just think, oh, I'm just going to give this to my friend and we're both going to like it, and then it's going to be private, but it turns into this whole public thing, which I think is interesting. It's
Sure.
kind of a surprise. So another one of our projects a couple years ago was this cookbook. Again, inviting you to get in the kitchen and do something. This one, a very good and normal relationship with food, kind of tongue-in-cheek. We were reflecting on our relationship with food at this time, which can be really fraught, it can be really complex. And we use these recipes to kind of document the ways that we feed ourselves. ourselves and also include kind of the random details in the recipe, like leave your coffee on the counter as you're leaving for work and then pour it out tomorrow because it's now moldy, stuff like that. And it turned into this kind of great way of connecting with people. I've noticed this is one that young women often come to the table and spend some time with, which really makes me feel connected and feel like we share something with this kind of like complex and sometimes shame-ridden relationship with food. And so what is a cookbook kind of houses this more complex and difficult thing, which I think is kind of fun and cool.
Yeah, it's like what Watch Out was doing with some bizarre scenes in the city of Houston, like this is doing with some of the strange ways we find ourselves feeding ourselves. Like, and to take a step back from it for a second, be like, you know what, maybe that's just kind of funny. Like maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah.
And at least great. So Pizza Caliente is truly just a recipe about putting a bunch of hot sauce on your burnt frozen pizza and then eating it. We've all been there, right?
Right? Like it's not just us. Or like, right? Or my favorite is fresh air on my chippies, which is just about going to the park and having chips on grass, which I think is a really important ritual, and I would condone that. And then we have the pickle process, is how we'll end our talk. It's really cool to hear about everybody's processes. I think in some ways they're really similar, but I just love seeing how we're all kind of different and how we create things. Our practice is very much like our friendship. We haven't yet branched out into printing for other people. I have printed for other people, like clients on the Riso, and for me, that sucked. I don't want to do that again. I want to print for me, and I want to print for us, and I want to print for like things that don't involve people paying me. I just think the pressure of that is too high. Anyway, so we start always with gabbing. We're always gabbing, we're always yapping, and I'll bring like photos that I've taken, which is part of my noticing practice. Like I'm always just taking photos. I think most people are, but I kind of like keep them and they're precious to me. And then Grant usually comes with like extensive notes and like sheets of
Yeah, I just carry little
stuff.
notebooks and write little things.
Yeah, and that's where all of the zines start. They come from just our noticing practice of like being out in the world and taking notes. And then we go away and it becomes a bit more serious. Grant will like write more, refine the writing, edit the writing, and I will prep our production schedule. I kind of wanted to include this like screenshot from our production schedule in case that was interesting to anybody. It can be really tight. I mean, often we're kind of up against the wire of like, oh, Zine Fest is approaching. We should probably like finish these. And you may notice there's like a huge gap here. I work full time. I'm an in-house designer and data viz person at a foundation, and so all of this happens between the hours of like 5:30 and midnight, or like maybe on the days I'm like working from home. I'm like working from home. Do not tell my boss. But yeah, this production schedule, like even though our friendship is, you know, it's just playful, but like when it comes down to the wire, it does require a lot of organization.
She loves spreadsheets.
I love spreadsheet, my God. And if you love a poem and a beautifully written poem, and I love Grant's writing because it's so detailed, I think that fits into our work so well. And then the design comes, and a lot of it is done digitally, except for the collage, which you do physically. But then I'm also a scanner head person. I do the masters, like the initial master on my laser printer, and then I'll scan and make decisions on the machine itself. And sometimes that's related to like availability of ink. Like what do I have still? What do I need? How can I use what I have to make what we need to make? So it's really combo, digital and physically on the scanner, like moving stuff around. And then recently we've added proofreading to our process. We maybe notoriously like don't proof, which I think is fun.
Oh, that first watch out was just
Rife with typos.
right.
But you know what, it's fine because this is like our passion project, you know, like I like that there's less pressure on it, you we make this because we love it, and there's not someone like a client on the other end being like that. It's very, I don't know, free. And then we Riso and bind. Right now the Riso is in my garage. I used to print at the Houston Printing Museum, which doesn't exist anymore, but they had this awesome space where anyone could go and book time on the Riso, and you would just, I mean, it was like $30 for like a whole day, and I used to print there, and it was super cost effective. Unfortunately, the printing museum went under, so now I'm the printing museum, and it is really great to hear about everyone's like financial plans. Like, I just, this is something I'm always curious about. Like, how do we make this cool practice not a drain on our finances as the artists? I'm still figuring that out. We kind of break even, and that's really all you can ask for, and I do extra freelance to kind of support our practice. But yeah, I mean, we kind of work out of my garage, and this is like this great photo of Grant collating all the pages, because you kind of forget when you're designing this like book of something, you need to be putting the pages on all the stacks individually, and it's just like really time intensive.
And also, like, where do they go?
Where
Like,
do they
why
go?
do I have an extra, like, missing elements?
There's always extras, like, I don't know, but this is something I love about the process. Like, it's just kind of not really under control. Like, it is under control in some ways, and I love a lot of the work that we've seen today is like so beautiful and perfect. It looks very under control. But it's also very much out of your control. You kind of just like hope and do and try your best to prepare.
I might also just say quickly, like, this talking about the community model, or the first talk, but like there is a huge demand in Houston for a place to do stuff on the Riso. So if any of you people who know about that kind of stuff and have extra time and capacity want to get that going in Houston, like, you would not believe at Zine Fest the number of people that come up to us and are just like, where the heck did you print that?
Yeah, people drive from Houston to come to our classes, like our $40 Wednesday night class.
Yeah.
What?
So
They
just
drive back home afterwards.
business opportunity.
Yeah.
Not for us.
That's not our thing.
I mean, if I had the time and the sort of mental capacity, it would be awesome. But also, again, financially, it's really challenging. Like, I lease, just to be transparent, like, I lease this machine from a company. And so if something goes wrong with the machine, like, it's my liability. It's not like I could just be like, oh, have at it. Just go for it. When really, like, oh my gosh, if this breaks, that's on me. And so it is just kind of this difficult but really rewarding practice.
Yeah, I think so. This is something. Do we have more? Do we have another slide?
This is awesome.
Yeah, this really is something. The theme is about like community and collaboration, and I think it probably sounds like we were just talking about a community of two, but we do actually have. I mean, it's really sweet to see people in Houston. I think do that are in the art scene, or that are in like I said at the beginning, like we do have a broad community in Houston, and we try to make these things that are interesting for people, that give people a little levity, that kind of feed. I mean, the first time I saw something come out of the printer, it was like really, really special. I don't know if y'all remember that moment, but I like to try to help other people feel that way about their like frozen pizza, or
The wonder.
the trash heap across the bayou from where the park is, or,
Gorgeous.
whatever it is, which is helpful when things feel so heavy all the time for so many of us.
Yeah. If I could just add one final note, I hope we haven't gone over. I'm so sorry. I'm a gaffer, obviously, but this is such these are all such love letters to Houston, and I think this is our offering to our community. This is we love it so much. We've documented it in this way, and we offer it to you as this artifact, this thing that we all love. That is also kind of sometimes ugly, sometimes beautiful, and difficult. Thanks.
gonna set a time. Are we okay on time? I don't know, just checking. All right, okay. Hey, so my name's Tyler. Thank you, Josh and Alexandria, for having me. And hi everyone, I teach here at Texas State, so just like, I don't know, see you around. So I guess this is gonna be a little different. I'm gonna show, it's called Various States of Resolution, and I wanna just talk about 2 projects. And specifically, I'm just interested in these projects for the way I've started to develop a language of working with the risograph resolution as a way of considering temporality within publications. I don't run a space. I work by myself. So just prefacing that is what it is. So to begin, I just defining a little context. Because again, I'm just going to talk about 2 projects, but I'm particularly interested in this context because it plays into how I think about risograph and the way risograph operates. I'm particularly interested in, and I'll talk about this as we go, in just how it makes an image. I'm not interested in trying to make the image as I see it outside of the risograph. I'm just interested in the way the risograph will make it and translate it. So the first terms that I'm pulling are from an essay called Fiction in the Landscape by Simon O'Sullivan. And the term fictioning, according to O'Sullivan, names the deliberate imbrication of an apparent reality with other narratives. So that's sort of a methodology of work, right? That's a way of operating. We talked like a little bit about noticing, but it's kind of like a way of being in a space and then thinking about how narrative and memory tie or overlay with that space. This then ties into a genre or a way of working, again from O'Sullivan, called docufiction, which can involve, according to them, a presentation of landscape, broadly construed alongside the instantiation of complex and layered temporality, which itself involves a foregrounding of different paths and possible features, which is how I hope that independent publishing operates, and how I consider the edition and how it functions. As I go, you'll see kind of I've been particularly interested in how a publishing practice and how a risograph reproduction allows you to continuously revisit and reintegrate prior work into new projects. So we'll see that. We'll see that later. The interesting thing about docufiction is that it kind of leads me into the second part of this kind of context that I want to talk about, and this is the idea of the memory image or the document image, which I pull from a text by Arna Lambert in an exhibition catalog for Chris Marker called The Grin Without a Cap. That was the name of the exhibition at Whitechapel. In this text, Lambert discusses the distinction or lack thereof between these kinds of images, between a memory image and between a document image, stating that Marker confuses these 2 types of images. This hinges on a line from Sans Soleil by Chris Marker, where talking about images saying they have substituted themselves for my memory. They are my memory. In which Lambert then goes on to state, the definitions of memory and document are not fundamentally different. So that's sort of where I position myself and my interest in how I consider the image taken at a landscape, the image taken in your sort of publishing practice, and how it functions both as a form of memory and as something that is integrated into a publication. So then here, right, thinking about how the risograph plays a part in this, and thinking about the risograph as a form of translation, the risograph as having its own language, and the risograph as a tool that translates these states, that translates the document image into the memory image and back and forth. right? It also translates previous projects back into a new publication. So I'm interested in how the risograph functions in that way, how the images start to break down as you scan and rescan and overlay and reprint, and just the language of these images as produced by this machine. So the first project we'll look at is this one. It's a 92-page, one-color risograph publication. I debuted it in December. It's called Variations 2022 to 2024. And this project, and I just, again, to preface, it's all one color. The images are kind of treated as a collective atmosphere within this publication, with the resolution kind of flowing in and out, right? So within this macro uniformity that we're going to look at in this one color space, there's a subtler approach to image resolution, asking kind of what information is gained and what is lost when we modulate those options, those settings. And then how can this kind of integrate into the content and concepts in the work. So there's a few different conceptual threads kind of working their way through this project. The first one that I'm showing here, this is a series of 35mm photographs taken at a local site. And this is a return visit to that site. I've gone there a few times to think about and make projects. These are printed, one, they're 35mm, then digitally scanned and translated then with the risograph at a 71 LPI screen for a slightly more detail. Now, the images are also kind of blurry and crappy to begin with, because like I'm shooting a point and shoot at like 6 in the morning. So we get this kind of delay between the snapping of the shutter and the image kind of being made. But then they're printed with care and this attention to the detail within what's there. The second part of this publication, and what the idea of the publication, and I view it as an ongoing project, is here on the right, scans of a previous project at this same site are folded back into the publication. So I'm considering here, right, so how place becomes overlaid with every previous visit, and then how reading a book becomes overlaid with every previous reading, and how those two work together in the publication, in the form of the book. And then thinking about how those temporalities are treated. So this, being a previously risographed image, has a screen on it, and then when the screening is reprinted, it's reading that screen and breaking it apart. There's a breakdown of that language in the treatment of the image. Additionally, there's older text. As you can see on the cover, I'll just jump back real quick. Another thread of this, and in these images, there's continued growth and decay of ferns at this particular site, maidenhair ferns at this particular location. So these projects here, while not visiting that site in particular, had also taken the notion of the fern as metaphor, as starting point. With some old text and some old images brought into the publication. Abstracted again further and printed at the 43 LPI, or the lowest resolution available on the Mac driver for risograph printing. So kind of removing that information, printing with a larger dot, pushing the contrast relative to the more even grays of the 71 and that primary thread of the publication. Here too, some new images of ferns, again, as metaphor for seriality, as metaphor for duplication, as metaphor of return and of different time scales, are introduced in the publication as well. in two different ways. One, print images taken in extremely low light, kind of pushing the black in my EZ as far as I could to reproduce that, and then taken in full light and printed with kind of a high detail LPI. Here are some details so you can just see kind of the way we're able to modulate that resolution, the way we're able to, within those settings, within those, the tool itself, and just working with the, kind of the parameters of one color, right? It becomes less about color and the way Risograph kind of is this bright kind of poppy tool, but it becomes a way of sort of meditating on what's possible with just the print, the way it makes the image. And then here are just two more details so you can see, again, the contrast in the way that the ferns are printed versus the way that the text is printed. The text was also fed through some other processes to fracture it and break it up. Additionally, I have scans of Goethe's Metamorphosis of Plants included as well. The next project I'm going to talk about approaches these same ideas, but in a less sort of direct way, in a less sort of I'm taking something and scanning it, I'm taking something and reproducing it over and over. This project uses the publication and uses the Risograph as a tool for flattening distinct moments, distinct, seemingly unconnected projects into one space. This project is called Convergence and Excavation, just published and just debuted last week in multiple formats in Boston. The cover is foil stamped. And this project sequences together a series of distinct moments and gestures, seemingly unrelated. One, the primary one that sort of weaves the whole thing together is a pilgrimage or a trip along the coast of Maine to a beach and a point at the ocean that we used to travel to when I was younger. And it was there that I was documenting both the trip, the ocean, but then a series of objects that I encountered. There's a brick and a net, a piece of wood. This moment where waves were kind of converging and collapsing together. Here's another image. These were all printed 71 LPI, so it was driver agnostic, but on a PC. So I was able to print high quality, small type, and thin lines within this space. Connecting everything together, and you can see it here in black and there in white, and included as a quote at the beginning, is this X motif drawn from the point of the corner of each page. And it goes in and out, in front and behind, and positive and negative with each one. And this I pull, so in my interest is in the first project, kind of folding old books into new books. I include a quote from W.G. Sebald at the beginning of this, in which he's talking about Sir Thomas Browne. So there's this, again, intertextual kind of books within books project. And the quote that I include from Sebald, right, so translating Sebald, translating Browne, is true to his own prescription. Browne records the patterns that recur in seemingly infinite diversity of forms. In The Garden of Cyrus, the book by Browne, for instance, he draws the quincunx, which is composed by using the corners of a regular quadrilateral and the point at which its diagonals intersect. So that becomes this connecting motif printed throughout the publication. You can see it repeating on the edges as well. The second thread of this publication is a found photograph from a secondhand store that my wife gave me. And the image is a crumbling wall, and it shows reticulate masonry, which was used in ancient Rome. which is this cross-hatching pattern within the brick. This image was pre-bitmapped at a lower dot screen than is possible on the risograph, and then printed in grain touch to allow that to be as true a representation of that bitmap as possible. There's some details. Lastly, the third thread of this publication, there are documentary images of a performance where my wife buried a clay object in the ground. These were also taken at a different time, actually almost 9 months earlier than the idea of this project. And they sat with me in this kind of space, in this flat space of practice, without necessarily a connecting point to pull it together. But then as I'm working on this project, I'm covering these objects on the trip, thinking about patterns of recurrence through the quote, and then the ideas of a publishing practice as always pulling together disparate parts that you're thinking about. This became a space in this publication for this work to live, for this moment to live. Also printed at a 43 screen, so a lower resolution than the other images for really contrast, kind of almost ghostly reproduction. Thanks.
Probably time for a couple questions. For like the group or individual group.
Do you recommend like taking your class and then renting, or do you rent without taking the class?
We have some people who rent without taking the class. I'm always really scared first. Like if I see their name and I don't know it, I'll like, go snoop through. But it's been cool to see people come through the studio and what they know and how they learned it. So there's a few people who have like printed at UNT, and then there's a couple other people who printed at like their art colleges. So they have enough knowledge to be able to come and kind of like use our resources by themselves. So you definitely don't have to take one of our classes to be able to use our machines. I think it just comes down to how confident you are in your like tinkering abilities.
I feel like I already know the answer or Tada's answer, but what's your favorite Riso color right now?
Are you asking me?
Everyone. But
While I'm really into black at the moment. I do have another color at my house. I have federal blue.
What's
which
your
is
favorite
all-
resolution?
Oh, 43.
You know, we have to do color and resolution down the way.
I don't know. She does not.
And you are so good at that. I am really liking cornflower on pink paper right now. I just really like how that interacts. I do not have a favorite resolution because, frankly, I do not exercise that level of control, but I love it.
Don't also do not have a favorite resolution, unfortunately. Favorite color? I'm trying to get just like a regular green right now, Kelly green.
I know we definitely have colors we hate.
Wow.
We hate mint and crimson right now because they're being repaired.
Yeah. Some colors are difficult. But what's your favorite one?
I would say cornflower blue was like my OG, like my first kid, you know. But I've been having a lot of fun with green.
Yeah.
Yeah. You love sunflower.
I do love sunflower. This combo of sunflower and we recently replaced crimson with bright red. But sunflower and red together has always been I've got a whole zine that you can check out. It's literally just, it's just a flower.
And we print everything 300 dpi. I feel like we're pretty
Yeah,
high quality Gucci.
I have no resolution preferences, but I will say I have a crush on Flow Orange right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping someday.
Yeah, Flow Orange is coming next week.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Question for everyone across the panel. Like, if there's what is a process or another machine that you think is secondary to like your Riso, if that's the primary? What is one that you think in your studio, in your space, that is like really your favorite and or you think is really important to like?
I'm in it for the guillotine cutter. Like that's.
Yeah.
Favorite jar.
I think we've been talking about like getting one of those like big guillotine
We're
cutters.
big on the book binding. I feel like for me, it's me and that spiral binder every single day.
The spiral binder has been.
Yeah, and then you got like a book press
That's true.
recently
Yeah.
for making like notepads and stuff.
Yes. I do love that spiral binder though. I think that like getting into doing like spiral bound kind of like books really got us kind of like rethink. I don't know, because
It was
kind
my
of.
anniversary present, the spiral
Yeah.
binder.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think like coming from just sort of like seed roots of just like always doing just like folded like saddle bind like staples or whatever. Something about doing or
Like perfect binding or spiral binding.
yeah, but there's something about like engaging with like the I guess the spiral bound one that like it really allowed a little bit more kind of play and kind of chaos and putting it together a little bit. Or like I don't know, chaos is mostly allowed it, but yeah. That's the favorite.
We kind of had a chance to geek out about it earlier. Yeah, like semi-automatic guillotine. That's fun.
Sounds
But I'm not technically a machine, but I would love to invest in like screen printing. Like that's something that I think is like very closely related to Riso, and I've been fortunate to have access to the screen printing lab through my school as of lately, so I've been utilizing that a lot. Yeah, making covers and just tip-ins, just random stuff, screen printing. Just like endless colors, you just mix whatever color you want.
Wow, I really want a guillotine so bad. I want one so bad. I really like French folded pages. It's just, I don't know, something about that's really chic to me. We did it with one of our publications. It was very work intensive to get it exactly perfect, but I love the kind of airiness, but also the weight that it gives each page.
I also don't know if this is technically a machine, but our game is packaged in berry containers.
It's picnics.
And I just think that's really, really nice.
A machine?
Machine or process?
InDesign. Sequencing images.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you all so much for being with us and chatting with us today. They'll be here tomorrow at our Riso-Rama Roundup market, which will be out here in the atrium and in the space from 1 to 5. So if you want to see their work and chat with everyone a little bit more, they'll be joined by a bunch more Riso artists and student groups within the Texas. I think someone's coming from Oklahoma too, so Texas-ish area. So we're excited to have them join us. So again, 1 to 5 in this space. Really briefly, I want to thank the people that have helped kind of put this event together. So Molly Sherman, Beth Thomas, Tyler Rico did a lot of printing for all our beautiful signs. We really appreciate that.
I need black.
Dimitri 10, Courtney Hansel, Rebecca Marino helped with the gallery, Daniel Torres took our photos. And then we had my grad professional practice class work along the branding and some of the activities out there. So Stephanie, Maham, Alex, Jada, and Kat, we really appreciate you. You know they're all out there. And then I guess, yeah, I'll announce the winners. So RisoLana came through yesterday and they juried our exhibition. I don't think any of the winners are here, but we can say their names out loud, and I want to figure out a way to put little stickers and something so we know tomorrow who the winner is. But our honorable mentions were a little pink Dropped Truck by Jonathan Mendez, a manufactured picture by Henry Geffner. The student award went to My Fall Beast by Jean Duran. Third place is Printer Lay by Devin Park. Second place, Prosperous Artista by Pei Swan Wu. And then first place was Bricks by Sean Morrissey. So, congrats. I will say that all of Sean Morrissey's pieces, the cabinets, the bricks, the grass, those are all takeaways. So if you want to just like grab one on your way out, gently, those ones even more gentle. The ones on the floors are really easy to grab. But that was their intention of the pieces, so definitely check those out. And yeah, so if you're taking the workshop with ASA, we'll meet out in the atrium and then walk up to our Riso space. I think we had like 13 signups, so I don't want to overwhelm you, but if a couple more people want to come up and check out what they're doing, you're more than welcome. And then otherwise, we'll see you all back here at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Bring your friends. There's going to be a lot of cool work here. So thanks all.